It was my final night working security at the abandoned factory, and the building felt heavier than usual. The air was stale, and even the sound of my own footsteps seemed too loud. I told myself it was just the wind rattling the old windows, but deep down, I didn't believe it. The cameras were my only comfort, their static hum filling the small control room. Most screens showed nothing but empty hallways, until one flickered to life with a dark figure standing perfectly still. My blood ran cold when I realized the figure was staring directly at the camera. I grabbed my flashlight and headed toward the hallway where I'd seen the figure. The beam cut through the darkness, but the corridor was empty, just peeling paint and broken glass. My radio crackled, but no one was supposed to be on the other end. The voice on the radio was a whisper, soft but urgent. "Don't go upstairs." I froze, trying to steady my breathing, but the urge to find the source of the voice pushed me forward. The metal stairs groaned under my weight as I began to climb. The top floor smelled of damp wood and rust, and the sound of dripping water echoed down the corridor. A door at the far end slowly swung shut, even though there was no wind. My heart thudded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Inside the room, there were children's toys scattered across the floor, coated in dust. A small rocking horse moved on its own, creaking rhythmically in the silence. I stepped back, but something brushed against my leg. I shone my flashlight down, expecting to see a rat, but there was nothing there. The radio whispered again, "You shouldn't be here." My hands were trembling so badly I nearly dropped the light. Back in the control room, the cameras now showed movement in nearly every hallway. Figures, some tall, some hunched, drifted aimlessly, their faces blurred beyond recognition. One by one, they began turning toward the camera. A loud bang echoed from the lobby, like the front doors being slammed shut. I rushed there, only to find the heavy steel doors locked from the outside. That's when I realized I might not be able to leave. The hallway lights began to flicker, each flash revealing someone closer to me. They were pale, with hollow black eyes that seemed to absorb the light. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. When the lights finally went out completely, the air grew colder. I could hear footsteps circling me, but nothing touched me. The whisper came again, this time right behind my ear. "You took the last shift." I bolted back to the control room, slamming the door shut and locking it. The cameras now showed only me, but from an angle I didn't recognize. It was like something else in the room was watching me. The walls began to groan and shift, as though the building itself was breathing. The screens went black one by one, until only a single word appeared in white letters: "Stay." I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I ran through the hallways, ignoring the shadows moving in my peripheral vision. The main door was suddenly wide open, leading into the freezing night. I didn't even stop to grab my belongings. When I turned back from the parking lot, the building's windows were glowing with a faint red light. On the top floor, a dark figure stood watching me, unmoving. I never went back, and I still don't know if I ever really left. It was supposed to be a simple overnight drive across the state, the kind where you pass nothing but dark fields and the occasional gas station. My friend and I took turns driving, the car radio playing low static between stations. Around midnight, we saw headlights in the distance, the first car we'd seen in hours. At first, we thought nothing of the approaching vehicle, until it slowed down to match our speed. Its headlights seemed too bright, flooding our mirrors in white light. When I glanced back, I realized I couldn't make out the driver's face at all. The car stayed behind us for miles, never passing, never falling back. My friend suggested pulling into the next rest stop, but the idea of stopping with them right behind us made my stomach churn. The road felt like it was stretching endlessly. We finally took an exit toward a gas station that appeared like a beacon in the dark. As soon as we turned, the headlights behind us flickered and went out completely. When I looked back, there was nothing there. Inside the gas station, the clerk looked uneasy when we described the car. He muttered something about seeing them before and told us to lock our doors if we kept driving. Before I could ask what he meant, another customer came in and he went silent. Back on the road, the air inside the car felt heavier. My friend kept checking the mirrors, swearing he saw movement far behind us. I tried to convince myself it was just paranoia, until the CB radio in our dash crackled to life. Even though we didn't own one, the voice that came through was slow and deliberate. "You can't outrun what's already in the car." My friend's knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. Neither of us dared look into the back seat. We pulled into a well-lit diner, thinking we'd shake whatever this was. The moment we parked, a man in a torn jacket stepped out from the shadows of the lot. His eyes didn't blink as he stared directly at us. Inside the diner, the man sat 3 booths away, never touching the menu. Every time I looked over, he was already looking at me. My appetite was gone. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. When we left, the man was gone. But the car with the blinding headlights was back, parked across the road. The engine was running, but the driver's seat was empty. I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. We drove as fast as we could, but every time we checked the rearview mirror, the headlights were closer. My friend whispered that the car wasn't touching the road. It was floating. I didn't want to believe him, but it explained why we couldn't hear its tires. The voice returned on the CB, "Almost home." The words made no sense. We were hours from home. My friend reached to turn it off, but the knob spun on its own. Suddenly, the lights vanished, and we were surrounded by pitch blackness. It was like the world outside the windshield had been erased. My stomach dropped as I realized the road beneath us was gone too. Then, just as suddenly, we were back on the highway a few miles from our destination. The car was silent except for the sound of our breathing. Neither of us dared speak about what had happened. When we pulled into my driveway, the porch light was already on, but I never left it on when I wasn't home. In the reflection of my front window, I saw the car with the blinding headlights parked across the street, engine running. This time, I didn't look to see if anyone was inside. I first noticed him while walking home from the bus stop, a tall man in a dark hoodie leaning against a lamppost. At first, I thought he was just waiting for someone, but his eyes followed me the entire way. When I turned the corner, I felt his footsteps fall in sync with mine. I sped up, pretending to be on a call, but he matched my pace perfectly. His shadow stretched alongside mine under the streetlights. By the time I reached my front door, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely fit the key in the lock. The next day, I saw him again, this time across the street from my office. He was pretending to scroll on his phone, but his head never turned away from me. That's when I realized he knew where I worked. When I left work, I took a different route home to avoid him. But at the next intersection, he stepped out from behind a parked car. "Evening," he said, smiling faintly. And then he called me by my full name. That I froze, my mind racing through every possibility of how he knew me. My name wasn't visible anywhere, and I had never seen him before. He just stood there, waiting for me to respond. I quickly crossed the street and ducked into a crowded coffee shop. My heart was pounding, but when I glanced out the window, he was gone. Still, the unease followed me like a shadow. That night, I received a message request on social media from an account with no profile picture. The first line read, "It's nice to finally meet you." The second line was my home address. I locked every door and window, but the feeling of being watched wouldn't go away. Even my dog wouldn't stop barking at the living room window. Every time I looked outside, there was only darkness. The following morning, a small package sat on my doorstep with no return address. Inside was a photograph of me from the night before, standing in my kitchen, taken through my window. I called the police, but they couldn't do much without proof of direct threat. They advised me to stay alert and keep my blinds closed. That night, I heard someone tapping on the glass outside my bedroom. The tapping stopped, replaced by the sound of footsteps circling the house. I held my breath, gripping my phone, ready to call for help. A whisper came from outside. "You forgot to lock the back door." I ran to the kitchen and locked the door, my hands slick with sweat. My phone buzzed with another message. A live picture of me taken from just a few feet away. I didn't hear the camera click. Sirens finally echoed in the distance after I dialed 911. But by the time the officers arrived, he was gone. They found muddy footprints leading from the back door to the edge of the woods. The trail ended abruptly, as if he had vanished. For a week, things were quiet. I started convincing myself it was over, until I found a sticky note on my fridge that read, "See you soon." The handwriting matched the one from the first message. I moved across the country, changed my number, and deleted all social media. But sometimes, while walking home at night, I still hear footsteps fall in perfect rhythm with mine. And I can't help but wonder if he's just waiting for the right moment to call my name again.